Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today for our Palace review is Mozza. How you doing, mate?
I've been far better, thank you. How you doing?
Yeah, I've also been far better. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Drew, how you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay, mate. I'm doing okay.
Yeah. We have the pleasure, I think, of doing a review of Saturday's game. We had as a brief sort of look behind the curtain to people. We had a discussion how we were going to make a 20-minute episode out of this because there's not a lot to talk about.
So we agreed to
very
talk
easy.
about the game for 2 minutes and then tell jokes for 18.
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. Really, I'm very eager not to blame the ref too much. I know there's an awful lot of him getting an awful lot of stick for particularly his first half performance, but you know to sum the game up on Saturday, Palace played the first half like they had 12 men. The ref was severely one-sided and gave a couple of really odd decisions, and we played the second half like we had 8. And when they're already controlling the game, it didn't really look good. Let's try break down the game and let's look at it. Maybe sort of look when we could have to fix it. Luckily for us, we have a game coming up thick and fast, and we'll play Wolves on Tuesday night, which means we can sort of put it behind us quickly, hopefully. But we'll discuss that. Drew, going into the game, I don't think there's sort of any arguments about the starting 11 that was picked for the game, considering it's the exact same starting 11 that played so well against Nottingham Forest last week. My question to you, rather than sort of as it usually would be about the starting 11, isn't would you have changed it? It's going to be how could it go so differently this week to last week? Like, why were we so sort of disjointed this week, whereas last week we looked really like on par and everyone looked on song? What could have gone wrong in the week for it to be that bad? Because it looked really terrible, especially when you put it up against last week's stay against Forest.
I don't think it was what went wrong during the week. I think it's now we have to accept that this is a trend. If you look at our points per game against teams in the top 10 versus teams in the bottom half of the table, it's night and day. You're looking at, I think it's 0.7 versus about 1.14 or something. It's ridiculous. One of the things that I do wonder, we talk about, it's the same expected lineup. I wonder if the players are getting stale. I'm all for building chemistry and continuity and confidence and security, but I do wonder if we do need to change it up a bit. Because you've already covered the referee. I don't really want to talk about him. I mean, it was laughable. But put Palace to one side. We could have been playing Leicester. And I can't see us getting anything out of the game. We were just flat. And I do wonder if Marco would benefit from changing it up, giving some of the fringe players a bit of a run. Putting Harrison Reed back in, giving Andreas his 10 role back, maybe bringing in Cess, maybe starting Rodrigo. People with something to prove, because we just didn't turn up. And we've done it at home against Wolves. We've done it at home against Southampton. The less said about the West Ham debacle at the London Stadium, the better. But once is unlucky, Ash. Twice is a coincidence. 3 times or more, you've got a trend. And so, in answer to your question, I don't think it's what happened in between the 2 games. I think it's a mindset, because you can't go through the whole season and get the results we get against people like Chelsea, against Arsenal, against Liverpool, and then fold like we do against Wolves, like we do against West Ham. It just doesn't make sense. And I mean, people talk about squad rotation and that, but I do wonder if we would benefit from it, because it's not the first time that we've looked jaded. We just didn't look. I'm not taking anything away from Palace, but like I said, if we'd been playing Leicester, I wouldn't have fancied us to win. That's how flat we were. So I genuinely think it's now a trend with teams against teams in the bottom half of the table. It must be an attitude thing. It's got to be. It's got to be. It's very difficult to maintain the level of intensity we show when we go to Anfield, when we go to Stamford Bridge, against teams that we believe we should be beating. So that's why I do wonder, and I admire Silva for being loyal, and I admire for him trying to get the best out of certain players and give them run in the side. But I do wonder if we would be better off. I wouldn't say go so far as to pick two teams, but definitely rotate more with people that've got a point to prove.
Yeah, that was going to be a question that I was going to ask. Actually, I was going to ask both of you. No, it's actually fine. It was going to be a question to ask both of you actually, because on Saturday, a couple of things I noticed during the game were players that weren't necessarily performing badly, but just looked like they were a bit dead on their feet. Alex Iwobi comes to mind. I think Alex looked, especially in that second half, he looked shot. And I don't know if it was a confidence thing or, it's just one of those games where, you're not getting any calls in the first half, because we all saw it. The players went in at half time and they were all absolutely fuming at the referee because they had to be pulled back they had to be sent away from him by Anthony Robinson to not talk to him as they were walking off. And when they came out in the second half, I was hoping they would have come out second half looking like they'd put that behind them at half time and sort of come out and start performing. They just didn't. Alex Iwobi was one of those players on Saturday. He looked dead, and it takes an awful lot for me to criticise him because I really appreciate him as a footballer. Another player that had a really, really odd game for me was Raul Jimenez. I'm not gonna put down his effort because he was everywhere on Saturday. He was trying to win the ball absolutely everywhere. But my problem I have with Raul in particular, and it's a point I have made before, and it was very evident to me, especially in the second half on Saturday, was when we are chasing games, it's almost like he's trying too hard to get himself in a position where he's on the end of the ball. 3 or 4 times in the second half during the game on Saturday, he won the ball out wide when he didn't even need to be out wide. There was players there already, and you sort of sat there going, "You're meant to be the man in the box. We're trying to find with the ball, not the man who's come out on the wing to win the ball." Especially when, as I say, 3 or 4 times he did it. Anthony Robinson's like 5 yards away from him, and he sort of bust the lung to get out wide to try to also win the balls. Like, you don't need to be there. And I don't know if it's a mentality thing because they're just so eager to try to get back into the game when we're behind. And we've seen it a few times this season where we've managed to come back late on in games, but it's almost like he's a little bit too try hard, and it's a bit frustrating because it's like we completely lose the shape of the game. And I did make a comment earlier on in the show, and I made it on Twitter as well, that we looked like we were playing the second half on Saturday with 8 men. And by that, I just mean that there were so many sort of lackluster performances and so many players that sort of looked like they'd gone missing, especially when we go 1-0 down. And you say it's like, doing it once or twice is just unlucky, and sometimes it becomes a trend. There is a real trend in games when we go 1 goal behind, especially where certain players just sort of disappear and they wilt a little bit. And I know ESR gets an awful lot of criticism for this in games. He had one of those games on Saturday as well for me, that as soon as we went 1-0 down, it was almost non-existent. Didn't really realise he was on the pitch until he got injured and came off again in the second half.
Doesn't this see, this is another theme, the ESR debate. Ridiculously talented, but I really want to like the boy as a human being as much as anything, but I wouldn't want him standing next to me when the walls come tumbling down.
No, we almost need to knock a bit of the Arsenal out of him. Like, he needs to realise that yes, it's all good being that silky, aggressive player going forward when we're doing well and we're doing that, but you need to be able to commit. Mozza, I'll ask you, mate, because obviously you were at the game and we want to get your opinion on it too. But out of the players when you look at the players and how they performed on Saturday compared to how they performed against Forest, right? You look at Jimenez, you look at ESR, you look at Iwobi, you look at, I think also quite especially, you have to look at Adama Traore, right? And the performances they put in on Saturday. And we've had this discussion about the fact that some of those players can't put 2 good games together, which is a bit of a worry. right? And Drew's already alluded to making changes and trying to freshen up the squad. For me, those are the 4 prime candidates that need to be sort of refreshed and moved around. And we'll talk about it when we do our Wolves preview later, which is obviously going to be in the next episode that's coming out tomorrow morning. But for you on Saturday, would you have made subs for those players quicker than Marco maybe did to sort of try and change the game up a little bit? Because we ended up in a position where we tried to make a few subs. You know, obviously Kenny came on to replace ESR and then had to go off himself because he then got injured himself. But all the subs on Saturday were very much like for like, and nothing changed. And then when we did eventually make a sub that changed the formation, was bringing Muniz on, so he was playing next to Rail. It was all a bit samey, and both of the players were just trying to take up the same space. So, like, what would you have done differently? Would you have made subs earlier? Would you have maybe changed up a bit differently that might have left us in a position where we were just playing a bit better than we were, especially in that second half when we were chasing the game?
Absolutely. Would have made the subs earlier. I can't remember the actual timestamp it was where Marco did that, but I'm imagining, as usual, it's around the 70-minute mark, maybe 65-minute. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, if anyone remembers.
We made the first two TC and Pereira came on the 58th minute.
58th. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So yeah, what's that? 15, 20 minutes almost into the second half. Too little, too late. With what happened as well, is that the first time? Sorry, is it the second time since the first time that we've seen 2 strikers playing up front, Muniz and Jimenez, since the Ipswich shambles that we had at Craven Cottage? Or has he deployed that since? If he has, it's only been 2 or 3 times. Go on.
No, I was going to say it doesn't happen very often, and you can see why.
Yeah.
Because they, as I say, they were just always trying to take up the same space.
Yeah.
And it was a bit messy. But go on.
So, as he was making those subs, I was like, where I sit or stand in the hammy end, squinting my eyes, trying to work out what formation is he trying to deploy here. Was he trying to do 3 at the back, 5, 2, 3, or I still don't even know. I'm not really a numbers man. Bit of dyscalculus going on, but I was happy to see Diop come on, and I think we could talk about the first goal, and of course it was going to be Anderson that would get an own goal, wouldn't he? But I feel like it's a little bit harsh on him to say that that was his fault totally. But just yeah, overall with what Drew was talking about initially, I've been trying to make sense of what's gone wrong. How can we see such a, to use your phrase again, Drew, a night and day contrast when we have games like this, when we do so well against some other sides? What is the issue? I think you've hit the nail on the head. It maybe is a bit stale, but with those changes that happened in the second half, yes, it's not enough. I think I would like to have seen Willian start earlier. I'd like to see Harrison Reed maybe even start and not just wait to use him in earlier cup tournaments that we're in. Younger players that want to prove themselves, fair enough. Yeah, and again, I think you said, Drew, as well, maybe start Muniz over Jimenez. Yeah, I'd be up for that. But are we clutching at straws here? Are we just going, oh, what can work? Because we don't know. There's just such sort of inconsistency that we have when we play these teams that are in the 10 in the table behind us. As such, is it part of the old Fulham curse? But I don't believe in all that sort of hokum anyway. But your mind does start to wonder what is it when we do face sides like this. I don't think Palace were world class on Saturday, but we didn't turn up at all. We were absolutely horrific. I can't remember the last time I've seen us play so bad or not turn up. Well, yeah, possibly. Even by the end of the game, I can't remember the last time I've seen so many people leaving that early, around the 80th minute, and I can't really knock them, but that sort of breaks my cardinal. It breaks my biggest rule. I think it's a cardinal sin to leave before the whistle blows, but anyway, I can't blame them. Lastly, sorry to go on and ramble, Ash, but yeah, you were talking about Raul Jimenez. He's the only one I would have actually said I had a good game, but now I think about it after what you said, yeah, great first half. Is he trying too hard? Possibly, but is it a Raul Jimenez problem, or is it a Fulham squad formation Marco Silva problem where he feels like he has to run everywhere? He feels like he has to put himself in those spaces because either A, he's not getting the service, or B, no one else is filling those positions. But I can totally understand what you're saying. It's detrimental to his game and overall to the result. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But yeah, changes need to be made. What they are, I don't entirely know. But I think, yeah, it's completely right here to say it's got a bit stale. Maybe there needs to sort of be a plan B formation.
Yeah, we'll have a talk about that when we do the Wolves preview show, because obviously there's going to be an interesting discussion around players that want to be changed, and obviously AJ is going to be joining us for that, so we'll get his opinion on it as well. My biggest thing on Saturday was there was a couple of players that just, it wasn't even for lack of effort. You know, Saturday was just one of those games for me where, you know, everything just wasn't, nothing was falling into place. There was like 3 or 4 times where, you know, Palace were just getting they were winning every first ball, every second ball, every lucky deflection was sort of landing at a Palace player's feet. Every misplaced pass Palace player would make was sort of deflect off somebody and then end up with somebody else's feet. Like, it was one of those games, and I don't want to take anything away from Palace, because I know that I got a few Palace mates that'll be watching this who like eager for us not to be sort of putting them down. There was only one team that deserved to win the game on Saturday, and it was Crystal Palace, right? They came in, they set up right, they stopped our players from playing, and for the first time, I think we can all say it this season, they kept Lukic quiet, they kept Sander Berg quiet, and when those two are not playing and clicking, you can tell it really is a real detriment to the rest of our game, because we really, really struggled in the transition on Saturday, right? You know, and again, it wasn't for a lack of effort from some of those players. I thought Lukic put in a shift, right? I thought Berger put in a shift. And I thought, as I say, I thought Raul put in a shift on Saturday. It's just, it was one of those games where it's just like nothing was working for us. Nothing was, it was just really disjointed, and it was just, you know, call it luck, call it whatever you want to call it. I know people say you make your own luck in games, and that's true. It was a bit painful to watch. And I think for the first time in a long time, probably, you know, since that Wolves game, which, you know, I was lucky I wasn't at that Wolves home game. It was just painful. It was painful football to watch. And, you know, we lost the game. We deserved to lose the game, and it's as simple as that. I don't really think there's much more we can say about it. Drew, is there anything you wanted to add there, mate?
I mean, Palace fans online think that when we talk about the referee, we're blaming, you know, the referee for our defeat, and we're not, you know. But and Palace fans have trouble reconciling the fact that the referee can be rubbish and they deserve to lose, you know. You know what they're like, oh, you know, you blame the referee, where's our drum? We deserve to win, follow. Who's that team we call the Palace? Where's our drum? You know, usual ramblings you get from Palace fans. I thought what was interesting, my mate who went with me to watch it, he thought from just the off that Palace weren't going to lose. There was something like the die was cast. And you talk about Lukic and Berge. It was interesting. I think Berge was taken off because Silva was frightened he was going to get another yellow. And I think the way the first half went, it made us more apprehensive, which is why we came out in the second half. I'm not saying that we handled it right. We shouldn't. We should have put it out of our minds. But there was something fundamentally wrong from the off. You know, call it attitude, call it whatever you want. But we seem to let adversity affect us more than it should have done. Now, we've talked about this before. I mean, Ash, I don't want to bring up the Aston Villa and Pereira penalty, where, I mean, I think throughout all the conversations we've had this season, we lost our way for, what was it, about 20, 25 minutes after that, Ash? Did not handle it at all well, did we? did not handle it, and it seemed very similar. It seemed very similar here. It was just something psychological, and you're right. I thought the subs. I mean, I'm totally with Mozza. I thought the substitutions were wrong. I thought that Kearney and Pereira, they're both ball players, and we needed some steel in there, which is why I'd like to have seen Harrison Reed, and I'd like to have seen more cover for Robinson, which is why I'd like to have seen Sessegnon. You know, and I take your point entirely about Muniz and Raul getting in each other's way, but those substitutions just seem to unbalance the team. But I think, and going and following on from what Mozza said about people leaving early, when it went up 8 minutes extra time around me, there were just groans. You know, because it was 8 minutes we didn't need. We could have had 8 hours and we wouldn't have scored a goal.
No,
You know, it was just one of those games. But I just think it was psychological more than it was anything else. That's how it seemed to me. But anyway, sorry, mate.
no. It's absolutely. Look, I think from number 1 to number 11 on the pitch, everyone dropped a bollock on Saturday. They were rubbish, right? It's as simple as that. The subs that came on didn't change the game at all. You know, I could sit here and criticize Marco Silva about some of the things he did on Saturday. Subs were wrong. I don't think we matched Palace like we should have done at all. You know, I think we played the game like we were expecting Palace to be as bad as Palace were when we played them at Selhurst Park, not realizing that in the 3.5 months since we played them at Selhurst Park, Oliver Glasner's got them purring and he's got them playing, especially away from home, because they love the counter-attacking football the way they play it, and we played into their hands. But if you're a
And
Palace
they've got
fan
all their
watching
players back as well. They're only missing one
exactly.
player now due to injury.
Exactly. If you're a Palace fan watching this, right, no one doubting how you deserve to win the game on Saturday, right? You deserve to win the game on Saturday. It's just one of those games for us where, you know, if it could go wrong, it did go wrong, proven by the fact that, you know, we had a couple of players go off injured. One of those had come on as a sub and went off injured. It just happens, right? We have games like that. The thing for us is, and we'll find it out, luckily for us, we've got a quick turnaround between the game on Saturday and the Wolves game on Tuesday night. We need to be able to put it behind us. You know, we're going to do a preview on the Wolves game. You know, that'll be out tomorrow morning of the day of the game. Where we'll talk about the subs and the changes that we need to make in order to sort of try and refresh the squad up. But you know, ultimately, we can moan about the ref on Saturday because I think he set a precedent in the game and he got into the Fulham players' heads, and psychologically it wasn't right. I think that they went off at halftime, a lot of them with a bee in their bonnet. They came out second half and they almost looked like some of them like they were tentative to actually play because they were worried about the way the ref was behaving and what we were doing. And it made us look even more disjointed than we actually were. And I think because of that, all of those things put together just led to what was an absolute like below par dreadful performance by Fulham. It doesn't take away what Palace did. Palace came and did what they have to do. How many times have we seen Fulham go away from home and pick up wins by doing the exact same thing? You know, we went to Man City and we did the exact same thing. We didn't win, but we put in a great performance because of that. You know, we went to Anfield and we got a draw because we did the same thing. Like, it's one of those things that you have to play differently away from home than you do at home. Palace came, they did everything exactly how they should have done to try and get the win, and they deservedly got the win. And we have to move on from that, and we will move on from that. Lads, I know we usually end this show by giving a man of the match. I can't give a man the match on Saturday.
No, can we skip
As I
that?
say to you, like every single one of them dropped a bollock on Saturday. There was no good performances. Even Leno for their second goal. I don't even want to get into how you get beat above you, but it's one of those things, you know. Overall, we have to look at it like it's a good job. There's a quick turnaround. Palace deserved the win. We were shocking. We move on, and hopefully, we all agree. We all agree on that. You know, it is one of those things. And we have to. So we'll end that here, guys. This has obviously been our Palace review. This has come out obviously on Monday night, so hope you guys are happy to listen to us moan about what it was. We will have a Wolves preview out Tuesday morning, so the morning of the game at 9 a.m. as per. We'll see you there for that. AJ will be joining us for that as well. So we'll move on to there. Mozza, Drew, thanks for joining me on this one. Let's get over and do this Wolves preview. Come on, you Whites.